Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Paul Leixley, the Director for the Institute of Frontal Studies and the Director for the Center for Innovation, Commercialization, Entrepreneurship. On behalf of all these organizations, the College of Business, and Lamar University, I want to welcome you here to hear a lecture from Mark Bowles. Mark is the founder and co-inventor. A lot of you know him, my family. Awesome. Mark is the founder and co-inventor of the technology behind EcoATM. Who knows what EcoATM is? I've seen them all quite a bit, right? EcoATM, first company to use automated self-service kiosks to purchase and resell used electronic items for purchase. He sold it for $350 million in 2013. Not a bad deal. Mark also has 25 years experience in the wireless, semiconductor, and retail industry. He has 9 patents, and I believe 30 more pending. Not bad either. And he's also involved in formation and funding of 6 venture-backed startups right now. In addition, Mark has raised 18 rounds of venture capital and debt financing totaling $250 million. And his company, Blue Steel Networks, was acquired by Broadcom in 2000 for $110 million. Mark is a board member of the University of San Diego's Center for Peace and Commerce, chair of the San Diego Venture Group, and he's a mentor and advisor to a variety of technology funds, including Techstars and Evo Nexus, a new startup incubator. Mark attended Lamar University for 3 years before he got his bachelor's degree in industrial distribution from Texas A&M University. After that, he received his master's in technology degree from Pepperdine University, where he sits on the board as a senior fellow at Pepperdine Gersagio School of Business. On the personal side, Mark was raised in Beaumont. Yay. I actually went to high school with Mark. Ran track, I think, along the way. He moved to Silicon Valley and now lives in San Diego with his wife and 3 sons. Please welcome Mark Bowles.
So you heard my background, but I got to admit, I've given a similar talk to MBA students at Stanford, Harvard, Duke, Pepperdine, UCSD, a bunch of them, and I've never been more nervous than coming here to history. I like the joke I was raised in Southeast Texas by Greek Orthodox Cajun hippies. It's actually true. And, some of the hippies are here. There's a bunch of the Cajuns. There's none of the Greek Orthodox. So anyway, I got a long history here, and I love the area. This jacket actually, my grandfather, Vincent Beckfield, my grandfather was Al Vincent, and this was his jacket. He gave it to me in the mid-'70s. Anyway, I went here for 3 years and then left. And haven't been back to the campus until yesterday. It's been a long time. So anyway, I hope I'm going to talk about my experience. I'm going to talk about entrepreneurship and innovation, but try to. I'm not much of an academic. My college professors will tell you that. So I'm going to talk about it from my experience of going through and just doing it. And sort of give you, most of the story I'm going to tell is about EcoATM, the most recent one. And so I will try not to make it too cliche or too academic, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. By show of hands, how many of you guys are business students? How many are MBAs? How many were forced to come here for class credit? How many of you consider yourself entrepreneurs? How many want to be an entrepreneur and after you get your degree, go start something? So the lessons I'm going to talk about are not just for entrepreneurs starting a business. If you're in a big company and a lot of this stuff, most of it still applies. So, so even if you're doing innovation and new product stuff inside of a company, hopefully most of these lessons will still apply. All right, I'm going to take this off. This is too red. All right, I'm going to talk about the process of starting from scratch. How do you create something from nothing? Just how do you ether an idea and take that into full fruition? There's a lot of mystery to that. You can't just put it in slides and talk about it for an hour and everybody knows it. There's still a lot of mystery, but I'll try to at least unravel a little bit of at least my own experience. How many people have actually seen an Eco-ATM? How many of you have sold me a phone? Oh, come on. You should go down and do that. So we started a coffee shop, classic coffee shop story idea. Summer 2008. I identify not as a technologist or a semiconductors or kiosk. I identify as an entrepreneur, and it doesn't matter what the business is. I'm going to go keep being an entrepreneur. So I've been in semiconductors forever, and it got to be a really tough startup game. 50 to 100 million bucks, 5 years. You got to lead the market by 5 years to develop the thing, and just got to be a startup game that was hard to win. So I was trying to reinvent myself, not as an entrepreneur, but in a different space. And read a survey from Nokia in the summer of 2008 that said that there was only 3% of phones were being recycled. There was 1 billion cell phones shipped that year. And I love this technology. It's amazing stuff. And people are just throwing that away, and I thought I could do something about that. So first came up with a bunch of really bad ideas, like the Girl Scouts do cookies. What if we had the Boy Scouts to do phones, go door to door, collect them, and fundraise? That's a bad idea for a bunch of reasons. But anyway, went through a bunch of bad ideas, and finally arrived at this idea of what if we had a kiosk? So I did the classic me search, where you ask yourself, focus group of one, what would be the solution to this thing? Me search, by the way, is really dangerous, and it's usually bad. It turns out this time it was correct, but I asked myself, why don't I recycle phones? I got a drawer full at home. I've got 7 or 8. First was I didn't know where to do it. I had some vague notion it was boxed at the zoo and the Horizon for battered women, but it was all charity. It wasn't incentivized, and I'd never go to the Verizon store anyway. And so everybody likes a clean environment, but we're all lazy. And so I have a special insight to laziness. And so I asked myself, what would motivate me? And I thought, well, if it was in my normal path, it wasn't a special trip, but I saw it sort of weekly, then I would probably I would engage. And then if it was immediately incentivized, not just a check in the mail, but I got cash right away, I would probably get my lazy butt off the couch and go do it. And then the third thing was the data. I was worried about all my data on there. So if I could handle all 3 of those things, I can motivate myself to participate in the recycling. Again, research is dangerous, but that was the themes. And sort of went from there and finally arrived at this idea of a machine that sat in high foot traffic retail places where we collected phones and paid cash. And it turns out it worked. So I'm going to talk about that journey. We're about 400 direct employees, probably another 150 or 200 indirect, all in the U.S. In fact, we do all of our manufacturing in San Diego, which people say is impossible. We do it there. And we're at roughly 1,800 kiosks, 42 states. We're in almost all the malls in the U.S. We're building out with Walmart and Kroger's and Safeway and H-E-B and a bunch of other grocery, and we're looking at international. So if you don't know about the machine, it's basically a big freestanding kiosk that's fully automated, consumer self-serve. You walk up, put your phone in. It uses some technology, artificial intelligence, machine vision, and then some electrical analysis to pretty accurately determine the value of your phone or your iPad, or your tablet, or your MP3 player. And then it offers you cash and then pumps it out if you accept the price, dumps it inside. And then we make our money by buy low, sell high. We pay you less than we're going to sell them for. And we collected our 4 millionth phone just a while back. So the mousetrap works. There's a lot of mice, a lot of dead mice, big market for dead mice. And so that's the basis on Eco-ATM. I'm going to talk about the journey of going from the coffee shop to the idea, testing, validating the idea, to full-scale production. This is our manufacturing facility in San Diego. And success and how to get there. So the first, we had the idea, and the first, how many people have read or heard about you guys teach the lean startup stuff. Anybody seen the lean startup books? So I'm not telling you not to read them, they're great. But I can give you the short version of it. And the short version is that to build a good product, and I don't care if it's a big iron piece of hardware like this for retail or a little piece of software, if you're going to build a product the first time and get customers to use it, you need to have a real close loop with those customers and test early, iterate, test early, iterate. The old school way of, we're going to sit in a conference room and we're really smart, sit in front of the computer, we're going to come up with this whole idea, build it, and then launch it, and the world's going to love it. That's a way to make a bunch of mistakes, and it almost guarantees failure. If you start with a minimum viable product, a small kernel of a thing that's the minimum viable product, and start testing that on consumers early and get quick feedback and do lots of iterations, the idea is that you're losing less of your precious dollars and time and effort building the wrong thing because you make small mistakes and you quickly fix them instead of making giant mistakes and going bankrupt and run out of business. So I applied that concept here. This is Old Bessie. This is a literally plywood, presswood thing, no technology at all. We actually put a handle, a trap door, and it was just a touchscreen, no other technology in the whole thing. But we built that. You would walk up to the screen and it would have all the cell phone manufacturers' logos. You hit Apple, for example, and it showed the Apple phone. You hit iPhone 3, 16 gig, and then you'd answer questions about the condition. Does it power up? Is it broken? And so forth. But it doesn't do anything. It's just on the screen. It doesn't put out money. So we would stand next to the machine. Actually, we learned pretty quickly you don't stand next to the machine. You would lurk in the aisle until the people would use it, and you'd come up behind you. You can't walk away. And they're stuck. So we obviously weren't testing any of the technology at all. But what we did test very accurately with this, it turns out, is how many people in a retail setting would see a machine that looked like it bought back your phones automatically and go, I'm going to do that, and drive home and get their phones and come back and try to sell them. And so when they would do that, we would walk up, we'd make sure it's an iPhone, not a banana, and it's the right, and then we would put it in the thing and dump it in. And so we were mimicking enough of the real product to test whether it was working. So we took this to, the first place that let us do this was Nebraska Furniture Mart, Omaha, Nebraska. So we loaded this Old Bessie in my truck and drove it to Nebraska, and we put it in for a 30-day trial. And we stood next to it. Again, one of the learnings was that we had to not stand next to it because people don't want to deal with another human being. They avert their eyes, they see you standing next to it, they know you're going to sell something, and they make a big heart around you. So we trick them, hide, and pounce on it. So no advertising, no promotions. We started out with store credit, but these are the first people to use the touch it. This was the first lady to use. She lived in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is 30 miles away. She saw it, got really excited. She drove back to Lincoln, got her bag of phones. Her granddaughter came back, and she had 6 worthless phones. And she probably burned $40 in gas getting Lincoln back. But she was excited. I think she got $6. And she was so excited about the whole thing. And brought her granddaughter to see it. And so, first customer, great. Within a couple of days, we started having lines. Within a week and a half, we had a perpetual 45-minute waiting line. The manager of the store, we opened up at 9, and like the 5th, 6th day, there's 3 or 4 people standing outside. Goes, don't like it, he's never seen it. They all go back to our machine. So, wow, this thing might work. People are responding to this. So we had 45-minute waiting lines through the end of it. We would go back to the hotel at night and try to process the phones. We were having to empty the bin twice a day, just getting so many phones. Then at night, we're processing the phones and trying to figure out what's wrong. So amazing trial. These are the phones just from the last 2 days of the trial. So we thought, wow, we got this now, right? This is gonna. We were still a year and a half from me getting, and 20 more machines that were averaging about 400 grand a year in revenue at a 60% margin before investors would invest in us. It was just too weird of a deal, all this expensive CapEx, capital expense, building all these machines, and all this OpEx, all the people that have to service them, and just looked too weird to the venture capitalists compared to internet. Have people send them in the mail and send them a check. So, that was an interesting lesson. So, still trying to get capital raised, sort of self-funding it, friends and family. So we built a Gen 2. Again, started off same as old Bessie, no technology. But we had a chassis where we could start hanging the technology in as we tried it. We built 20 of those. Again, had them out there for a year plus. Tried different venues, universities, malls, more tests, same thing. Long lines, people loved it. So I remember taking it, I pitched 59 VCs on this before I actually got ink on a check. And 59 VCs is more than all of the other companies I've done combined. And I got pretty good at separating investors from their money, and I thought I could do it here. And it turns out that it just was not in vogue. Retail, expensive CapEx, OpEx, it just looked too weird compared to all this internet efficiency stuff. So I remember it was about the 40th VC, went up to Silicon Valley, as a friend of mine. The guy says, Mark, he listens to my pitches. Mark, this is a really bad idea. As a friend, I'm telling you, you should go do something else. This is not a fun thing. And so I came home, and my wife said, how'd it go? I said, it's great, but we need to sell the house. Pull the kids out of private school and sell the education funds, which I did. I got it back, and I got the house back too. But I tell that story because I'm going to make a point later about risk and when you know it's going to go and not, or think it's going to go. So even all the good companies that I know of, they have moments like that, and there's lots of them. And so this is a lot of hard work and a lot of risk taking, and that's what separates innovators, entrepreneurs from everybody else, is that calculated risk and testing of the market and that loop. So we finally got some funding and built a Gen 3 kiosk. These are the ones that are out there now, fully automated. We didn't have to have staff standing next to them to make sure that there were iPhones and not bananas. And took off from there. And it turns out the automated actually works better than the non-automated with people standing next to it, because a few of the lessons, and early on at Nebraska Furniture Mart, I'm standing at the kiosk company, there's a 45-minute waiting line, and you didn't want people to wait forever and then get up with bad phones and get no money. So I would stop after a transaction every now and then, and I would walk the line, and I would say, hold on a second, and I would walk the line and say, hey, if your phones have a whip antenna, you guys, some of them aren't old enough to probably remember those, but analog phones had a whip antenna, those had no secondary market value. So I wanted to tell those people, look, I'll recycle them, but don't wait in line because you're not going to get the money. So I would walk the line, and every time they would say, no, Sonny, I want to see what the machine says. It's like, I programmed the machine. But it was a light that went on. We had some idea about this, but the light went on that what people, one of the main things they valued out of this automated machine was that they didn't have to talk to another person. We don't like, as a culture, setting the price, the value of some used thing. It's awkward. You feel like you're getting ripped off because there's no real science to it. We put science to it, and it's objective. And the machine never says, okay, come back, I'll give you another $5. It doesn't negotiate. It's the same answer every time. And it also doesn't embarrass you that, you know, maybe you're embarrassed you're trying to sell a $1 or $2 item out of your, you know, kitchen drawer. So it's anonymous, and so that part of it in this testing was, you know, not just validation, but actually opened our eyes to why people really like this as opposed to talking to another person. So anyway, Gen 3, and then we went from there. And now we're, you know, full-scale production manufacturers, probably 3 or 4 roughly a day marching out of the factory. And again, a little over 4 million phones from about 2 million customers who were paid 70 million plus. I can't say exactly, my investor relations people at home will do that if they told you exactly, but in the ballpark. I get in a lot of trouble from those guys. So the lineage of the technology, there's a lot of invention here, but it's mostly taking technologies that existed and putting them together in a new way. So machine vision, been around a long time. How do you use that, apply this to this problem? I had a little bit of background. I did one company project on facial recognition, so I had some idea if I could apply that to here. Turned out way harder than I thought, but it finally worked. And artificial intelligence, we actually have a library of every phone ever made and every tablet, almost. And we have to perpetually get, as they come out, we have a physical library of all of those. I don't know if it's the only collection in the world, but it's probably pretty close. And that's how we train. We actually put a new device in front of our training cameras, studies it until they can differentiate it from everything else. But we're at 5,500 devices trained. So it can differentiate it from the rest of them when it sees it next time. And then it has to grade also on broken glass and tell that from a thumbprint versus a crack. And so there's some interesting things that we have to come up with there. Robotics, it has to take your phone in and out, disconnect it, and dump it. So there's a lot of robotic stuff in there. We use facial recognition for, I'll talk a little bit about this, but we have done a whole lot of really interesting and complex stuff, I'll say, to prevent getting stolen phones. Stolen phones suck when you get them. They're expensive, and you have to return them, and it's an expensive component. Plus, you don't want to be in that business, right? So one of the things we do is everybody that comes to the kiosk, I actually have a room full of people in San Diego right now, probably 25 people that are sitting in front of monitors. Every kiosk has cameras on it, and we're monitoring every transaction live. And we make you put your driver's license, get a thumbprint, and have cameras, and we actually validate it live. And we have software that looks at all the watermarks on the licenses to make sure that they're okay, not expired. So some pretty complex stuff that we had to come up with to do that in real time. And we use some facial recognition to augment that process. Fingerprint validation. So the inspiration, how many people have seen a Coinstar machine at grocery stores to extract your coins? So those first big successful guys in the U.S. with a vending machine, a reverse vending in a sense, take stuff back. Tomer's another company. We don't have much in the U.S., but you put your bottles and cans in it, and it reads the redemption value and pays you cash on the spot. Very popular in other places. So those are sort of inspirations. And then ATMs, of course, and then self-serve checkout. It's been coming for 40 years, and it's finally here. But since ours is self-serve check-in instead of self-serve check-out, except we have a little more complex problem in that these things don't have price tags on them as they do going out. We have to determine what the value is to check them back in. So those were the sort of main inspirations. All right. So now I'm going to talk about that journey again, but I'm going to take you through my top 10 lessons. This is not the only way to go about this, but it is, a lot of these things are common with, at least what I've seen with people who are successful entrepreneurs. So I'll go through these quickly, and I'm going to do a slide on each of these and sort of summarize at the end. So make the problem finite in your mind. You become a world-class expert at whatever this thing is you're going to do. Big company, same thing. Startup, same thing. You have to become an expert. Second, become an expert, the cheat sheet is you don't figure it out all yourself. You go ask people that know, and they will tell you. You'd be surprised that when people get really smart about something and good at it, they love nothing more than to talk about that thing. Go ask them, and usually they will tell you. Venture team like is a marriage. You know, it's cliche. It's all about the team. It is. It really comes down to people. And startups are not. You know, people say business is business, and it's just business. It's not. It's a very emotional, heart-wrenching thing. Even if you're successful, it's a really messy, emotional relationship business because you're going to be spending more time with these people generally than you are at home, and you're going to be making big, hard decisions about money, and about the children, and the products, and the stock, and the equity of decisions. And so it's a terribly emotional business. So don't let anybody tell you business is just business. Test, iterate. Again, that tight loop of not just thinking you know what it is, but getting real feedback from real customers. Research the competition perpetually. We all have this human nature of, you put on your big phone number one finger and, we're better than those guys. And it's not always true. In fact, 50% of the time you're wrong. You lose. In startups, it's probably 9 out of 10. So you have to be intellectually honest and ask people to look at your stuff and call your neighborhood and seek out critics. Don't just blind yourself and breathe your own exhaust. Become a world-class fundraiser. You may be a great engineer with a great idea, or whatever. If you're going to do a big company or small, you got to go ask for funding and get the thing. And that's where a lot of startups fail. They know their product, they just don't know how to pitch it. And to do that, you have to become a world-class storyteller. And I'll talk a little bit about that. Don't skimp on legal. It's really tempting. Early dollars are the most expensive ones. If you create a business, again, big company or small, and you create something that's successful and creates value and revenue, you will be attacked and you will be sued through the legal system. I'm not saying that because I'm jaded, I'm saying it because it happens almost every time. And so do not skimp on the legal part of it. It's tempting to do it. Do not do it. Conjure innovation. I'll talk about that at the end. I think you can actually conjure up innovative ideas, and I'll talk about that. And then do whatever it takes. I was thinking about this before I got here. What is it about Southeast Texas that I think we're above average of everybody else? And I think these are key components. I think it's what has informed a lot of what I've done. Number one, I think Southeast Texans, when you say hard work, they know what that is, and I think they work hard. But I've got witnesses here. I'm not that smart. I really made it up in hard work, and everybody else can too. And that sounds cliche and whatever. It's true. Whatever you lack in other things, you can. And hard work. My friends will tell you I'm not that smart. They grew up with me, but they would all say that I work hard, and that's the difference. And I also think Southeast Texans are generally, not all of them, but generally good storytellers, and invoking, passion in other people and moving minds and hearts and matter. You got to tell stories. I'm not talking about lies or untruths. I'm talking about being able to inspire people with your vision about whatever. I think Southeast Texans are sort of genetically disposed with that somewhere. All right, so number one, study the problem until it feels finite. We could do a Rubik's Cube. I don't know how to do, my kids do. So the world record, I think, is 7.8 seconds. If you've never seen it on YouTube, it's amazing. There you go. And there's a handful of people below 8. If you're going to do whatever you're deciding to do, you have to study every facet of this problem, become a nerd geek on every little component of whatever you're doing, and become below 8 seconds, maybe not the 7.3 guy, but below 8 seconds. Sorry, that's what it requires. You have to become an expert. not just in the engineering piece if you're an engineer, not just in the marketing piece if you're, but you have to become an expert at all. And it's a three-dimensional, four-dimensional, five-dimensional problem. So there's markets, there's channels, there's products. There may be multiple products. There's competition and all their versions of that. There's the customer's view. What do they think about, care about? There's the patent and IP view. What if you got a great idea, great market, but turns out it's all patented? There's a competitor's view, the financial market view, and you can keep going on, right? But you have to become an expert in all of this, and that is a lot of hard work. And that's the part that needs to be done perpetually, but up front before you go dedicate your time and effort. I remember the first startup was like so excited. Oh, an idea for a startup, you just rush in and you're not prepared. So a lot of, the cliche or actually the quote from Thomas Edison that 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, absolutely true. Remember my comment about hard work. But 1%, you need to go do 99% perspiration on a good 1%. So figuring out up front that 1% is the right thing, you become an expert at it until not only you convince yourself, but you're able to convince other people and you're absolutely sure. Because it's heartbreaking to go pursue something that you could have known wasn't going to work. So how do you do that? What is the cheat sheet? You'll ask experts. I think every business, you can break it down just like a soup. If you can back it up with your ingredients, a chopping board before they go in. Break every business down as a thought experiment into what are going to be the key components, ingredients of this business. There's the channel, there's the distribution, the customer. There may be multiple kinds of customers. There's the marketing, the technology. So break all that down. And now you have to become a world-class expert below 8 seconds in each piece of those components. How do you do that? Think about who is the Elvis of your industry. And not just the industry, but every one of those components, the channel, the market, and so forth. So I did this, and all right, kiosk business, phones. Who are the world-class, Elvises of those components? So the process I went through, kiosk. Well, who's Elvis the kiosk? This guy named Jens Molbach. He lived in Seattle. He founded Coinstar. MBA at Stanford. It was his senior project. And ended up working really well. Took it public and retired in 2001. And he was sort of on the sidelines, not doing much. I looked him up. He was the founder of Coinstar. And got on LinkedIn. And I figured out I knew a guy that knew him, or at least was on LinkedIn. Got an introduction. Called him up. Said, hey, I'm doing this. And what's your input? He gave me about 90 seconds the first time. Thought it was weird and hung up. I waited about 2 weeks and I called him back. Basically, long story short, I stalked the guy until he would talk to me, because I needed to know if I can take all this knowledge as his head and have him just tell me and stick it in my head, and then do it for all of these other places, I can save myself a lot of pain and suffering. So did the same thing for Redbox, the movie guy. Who founded that? Who's that guy? Even the dead bodies on the road, the DVD, they have stories too. The guys that got beat by Redbox, they met their founders. What went wrong? They have stories to tell too. Then went to the phone recyclers that had already gotten all the VC money. Called them up and got to know them. When I say got to know them, I mean I went and talked my way in, visited their places, got to know them personally, became friends. I know their dog's name. I know their son's bat mitzvah. I know the smell of their breath. You can't get this stuff by sitting behind a computer. And so you have to get out, rub shoulders, and so that's the kind of thing that's the most valuable. Research, great. Go out in the field, talk to real customers, real competitors. Secondary market buyers, same thing. Big box retail, I'm going to retail, I don't know. So who's the founder of Costco? Looked the guy up, talked my way in. He ended up investing and joining my advisory board. Best Buy, got executive there for 20 years, and he joined my advisory board. Told me everything how to get into Best Buy. So anyway, the cheat sheet is to go ask the experts, and they tell you. And you can get it put together really good. And shoot high, go for the Elvis. You may end up with somebody less than Elvis, but start high and you'll be shocked. So I put all of that together by talking to these folks, but along the way, in each one of these segments, I was actually recruiting. Jens ended up investing and joining my board, and so forth. So I built a team, not just board members and advisors, but partners and employees, world-class experts, all part of the company. Almost everybody is a world-class expert in some component of it. So that's, again, ask experts, they will tell you. Okay, vet a team like this in marriage. Again, it sounds cliche, but I do the same thing with founders. It's really heartbreaking to have to fire someone. It's terrible for them and for you. And because if it gets to that point where you have to do that, it's not good, particularly in a startup. And it can be devastating, particularly a small team. You take 1/5 of them out because it can be really damaging. It's like rings on a tree. You get a flaw in the center ring, and it amplifies and it keeps going. So you have to vet team members so you don't end up with those flaws and they don't amplify. What I've evolved to, I didn't always do this, but if I'm bringing on a new team member, and this goes up to maybe 20 employees, I get to know them personally, dinner, invite the husband or wife from home, the kids, have them over to my house, just over the top. You don't get stinking drunk with them, but get to know them really personally, not just the normal interview stuff. Because again, it's family. It ends up being really emotional. Making mistakes like that is devastating. And so it's got to be a vibe, not just with me, but all the other 20 people in the company, and it's got to work. It's a chemistry thing you can't figure out unless you mix the chemicals. And so mix them up before you make the commitment to each other. Test, iterate, test again. Again, I did lots of survey monkey surveys of my friends and research reports and analyst reports. I didn't get any, my learning was going like this until I got a machine in the field, and then it went like this because I'm talking to real customers. Real dogs are eating my dog food out of the dog bowl, and I'm getting, why are you there? Why are you doing this? What do you think about my pricing? What do you think about the service? And then I'm taking the phones back and selling the first time on the channel. What do they care about? What's their pricing? How can they get competition out of that? So test to get to the point where you have a real product in their hands as quickly as possible. And I love this quote by Mark Twain, a man who carries a cat like a tail learns something he can learn no other way. You can't explain what happens and really understand it until you do that. The guy who wrote the Lean Startup book says it this way: the only way to learn is faster than, the win is to learn faster than everybody else. It's about making good decisions quickly. And again, going back and asking experts, that's how you get smarter quicker. And that's the guy that found LinkedIn. He says it this way: I tell internet entrepreneurs, if you're not embarrassed by your first product release, then you have launched too late. Get it out there, make mistakes. You got to be careful with this because what's not said is, you're doing destructive testing on the market. And so you're applying that to just a little destructive, you don't destroy the marketing process, then you didn't accomplish anything. But this stuff is not new. The founding CEO of IBM back in the 20s said, the way to succeed is to double your error rate. You are going to make mistakes. You make them as quick as possible and iterate. Don't let it build up and you go off the cliff. Research the competition perpetually. Again, we all tend to underestimate. It's human nature. You just get to red team, blue team, you're against the other guy, and you're always underestimating them. Don't drink your own bathwater. Look for critics. Seek them out. Is my baby ugly? And why? How? It's hard to do. You have to stay on that. Be a world-class fundraiser. Again, this is a hard thing. I see more companies, entrepreneurs that have a great thing, and a tree falls in the forest, nobody's around to hear it. So you have to become a world-class fundraiser, and that's a hard thing to do. So again, go ask the experts. Investors are like to feeding a squirrel out of your hand. There's no quick movements, right? You got to build up trust, and so pitch them early. In fact, don't even ask them for money. Say, hey, really smart venture capitalist or investor, and I'm not asking you for money. Just tell me what you think about my. And then you get them out of the mode of how am I going to tell this guy no? To he thinks I'm a smart person. I'll tell him honestly, and so you get that kind of feedback until you get to a point where the feedback seems like you can get funded, and then. Go from there. And practice, 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 and listen, listen, listen. I've done literally hundreds and hundreds of pitches to investors, and I would say I'm pretty good at it. But if I did one tomorrow, I would practice it in front of the mirror, and I would find people to listen to it and give me feedback and polish it. It will take me 50 pitches before I have it to a point where it actually is resonating with, and I'm good at this. And so you have to really practice and practice. What you think you're saying is not always what people are hearing. Let me skip past this one. Talk just briefly about marketing and the power of story. Think of storytelling as a technology. It's the way that we invoke action and emotion in other people. And again, when I say storytelling, I'm not talking about spinning a yarn that's not true. I'm talking about telling a story that invokes people to listen and then action. And that comes, if you think about it as technology, like fiber bandwidth, fiber and 56K modems. You guys aren't old enough to remember this. Low bandwidth, high bandwidth. If you're a good storyteller and you can package it in a way that makes sense, it's fiber, and I can go into everybody's head, and they can get what I'm trying to say. And then, even better, they can, if it's packaged right, they can remember it, turn around, and viral, tell other people. If you have a great story and you've packaged it, but if I try to do 56K, by the time I get to you, everybody's gone and you've left, right? And they're not telling anybody about it. So you have to become a good storyteller to invoke any kind of success. I've had some that had terrible, boring stories that were still fairly successful. So not every story is, awesome, and not all of them need to be polished to a viral thing. I'm building microprocessors for a handful of IT closets and parallel process, boring stuff, not a consumer story. But you can still polish those and make them interesting for people. So again, practice, practice, practice. We had great story at GoATM, great viral pull. It creates a tailwind, and there's so many headwinds of any business. Having a tailwind of everybody talking about your stuff, you can't pay for that. And so it's awesome if you can get there. So think about the story and how powerful yours is and polish it. People want a story that starts out with an earthquake and works its way up to a climax. Again, it's powerful. And Albert Einstein said it this way: if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough yourself. You're not below 8 seconds yet on the physics scale. And you got to go back. People know when you know what you're talking about. When you are so confident you're below 8 seconds, it comes from your pores. It makes your story better. It allows you to have people follow you, whether it's an investor or an employee you want to hire, or so you have to know if nobody's doing this, where are you going to go? So somebody has to do that for your business for it to be successful. Legal, again, I won't try to reveal too many of my emotional scars here, but it's not good enough to just be an honest person that does the right thing. That's not with the legal system. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. So the only protection you have is to really pay attention to this. So whatever you're doing, find an attorney, hopefully for free, a friend, find somebody that can help you on this path, but don't wing it. serious. All right, let's talk about conjuring innovation. I read a stack of books this high on innovation when I was getting my MBA. I didn't understand a word of it. I really didn't get it. But what I know to be true, because I've seen it, is that innovation comes to you. Everybody's had the epiphany moment. You know, some people in the shower. Who's had the epiphany moment where you have an idea? You know, like, sometimes it's in the shower, right? Why in the shower? They, you know, theories about sensory deprivation, it's routine, and your mind's free to do whatever. I don't care. It happens. It happens. For me, it happens in the shower. Some people it's in the car, like you. Same routine, and the brain goes into that alpha waves or whatever they think. So what I encourage you to do is when you have those epiphany moments, they may still be a bad idea, but at least when you have that moment, think about where you are and what you were doing, and try to recreate those moments. Besides showers, one place for me is one of the co-founder friend of mine who've started a couple companies together. His name is Eric. We both like to come in early, and every morning he's standing in his door jam with my third cup of coffee. He's sitting at his desk, and the office is quiet, and we're there, and we're just sort of bantering back and forth. And we had two companies, same situation, you know, 5 years apart. We had more great ideas that came out of that, more patents and good decisions from that interaction. I don't know why that worked, but I know it was the third cup of coffee at 7 a.m. standing in his door jam, going back and forth. So I recreated as many of those moments as I could. So I think you can actually, I believe, trust me, this is true, right below the surface, there are gadgets of billion-dollar, earth-changing, earth-improving, world-improving ideas right below the surface. And we can't see them most of the time because we're distracted with whatever. And it's opaque, you can't see through it. You get those moments of clarity, and all of a sudden you see through and you can see this idea. I think you can recreate those, and where you can see through more often. And whatever it is that works for you, recognize it when it happens. Take showers. Get Eric and take a shower with him. But whatever works for you, do that. And repeat it, and you can use it as a weapon that you conjure up, because even if you have that 1% inspiration of the 99, you're going to need to go back to the innovation well dozens and dozens of times to solve new problems. And so you need to have a way to conjure that at will. And that's the only thing I know that works, and I think it's going to work for everybody. All right. And last, I'll say do whatever Winston Churchill said. It's not good enough that we do our best. Sometimes we must do what is required. The other thing about Southeast Texans is they're generally not whiners. You know, going gets tough, get going. What I mean by this is that no matter how smart and good you are, every new thing you do, you're going to run into stuff. It's all on-the-job training. There's a bunch of new stuff you're going to know. You're not going to be an expert at. And most people bounce off it. I can't do that. Find a way over, under, around, but do whatever it takes. And I think that's a common component with successful entrepreneurs. Is now sometimes they're wrong. I mean, you know, there's a lot of failures, right? And they were wrong, but you have to, you know, find a way. Our best is not our best at that moment. It becomes our best when we learn a new thing, get around it. So do whatever it takes. Don't give up. You guys are probably too young to remember Sly and Fan Stone, but it says it's not easy to make it. If you try pushing a little harder, think a little deeper. And then also, I think in the immortal words of Frank Zappa, without deviations from the norm, progress is not possible. And I say think big. I see more entrepreneurs doing little small things, and the small ones are just as hard as the big ones almost. If you're going to go dedicate your life and time to something, pick big ones. You don't have to, but I encourage it. The big ones they have a bigger impact. Pick something with a social impact as well. It's not just about money. There's a lot, like I said, there's tons of ideas. And you just have to connect with them and deviate from the norm, like Frank Zappa did. Anyway, I'll end there. I won't summarize. I want to save as much time as possible for work. Questions?
Mark, when you were talking to the experts in the field that you were, an industry that you wanted to enter, were you ever concerned about protecting your ideas in those conversations?
That's a great question, and I have yet to see, I'm sure it's happened. Another human nature sort of fallacy in that situation is, I meet more entrepreneurs, I'm exactly like this myself. You have this idea and you think you tell anybody, it's going to be over. Ideas are commodities. I'm going to exaggerate to make my point. Ideas are commodities. What's not a commodity is going and making them work, executing on that. That's the hard part. That's the 99% perspiration. I have yet to see a big company or a small. I've signed and had signed, non-disclosure agreements with thousands of situations, but they don't matter. What matters is going to execute. So the knee-jerk for almost every entrepreneur, including myself, for the first 3 or 4 I did was, don't tell anybody. You can't do that. I have yet to see anybody steal someone's idea and go execute. I've never seen it. I'm sure it happens. But there's 100 dead startups erred on the side of don't tell anybody anything, and nothing ever happened. The tree fell in the forest and didn't make any noise. So tell me when it happens, and I'll put one in the column over there. But the bigger danger by far in my mind is you got to go out and tell the world. So again, don't be stupid, but and use non-disclosures, but again, do legal. But don't make the error of just thinking everybody's going to steal your idea. It's not very common.
What personal trait do you believe that made you successful?
Like I said before, I think it's. I'd like to say I'm smart, but it really is just working hard. I think whatever you don't have in intellect, assets, guarantee you can make that by just working hard. Life's unfair. I mean, there's all kinds of things that aren't fair. But if you dwell on that, then you're not making progress. And so you got to overcome whatever it is, do whatever it takes. Usually that involves a whole bunch of hard work. All right.
Along those same lines, could you talk a little bit about time management and perhaps your personal disciplines you'd like to share with us?
I wouldn't say time management is a discipline of mine. So I'm going to let somebody else talk to that. I still need to improve there, so I'll put that on my New Year's resolution. No, I have to admit, I've spent, most of my career working 60, 70 hours a week, sometimes a lot more. And you got to rise to the occasion. Again, if you're not, if you can't beat them with intellect, make it up with hard work. Yes.
At what point did you approach Outer Wall, and now that you have a relationship with them, are you developing other products to work with them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, so very early on, Coinstar, I talked about Jens Molbach, owned Outer Wall. So we'll use Outer Wall, Coinstar interchangeably. They changed their name to Outer Wall when they bought us. But I believe strongly in strategic investors. A strategic investor is an investor who has some interest in what you're doing. Outer Wall's a kiosk company. I'm doing a kiosk. They were a strategic investor. Claremont Creek Capital is a normal VC, they're investor, but not a strategic investor. So I believe I've had strategic investors in almost every company I've done, and I think they're great. A lot of people hate them. The problem with strategic investors is if you get their money, and let's say they're in an industry with 5 or 6 other competitors, and you get their money, then you have kind of their stink on you, and the other ones don't want to play with you, right? So a lot of times your exit is to your potential selling the company is to some of the other 5 competitors, and if you take them out of that process and they're not interested because you're too close with the one competitor, that can be a problem. But you can manage that usually, and usually they try to do some things, try to get access to your IP, first rights of refusal on buying you, and a bunch of things that you just have to say no. So I got Coinstar involved very early. They had a next big idea contest in 2009 when I had Old Bessie, and I applied for it and I won, and then rolled that interest into an investment eventually about a year later, and then ultimately they acquired us in July of 2013 for $350 million. And the way we got into that point was we were already sort of planning to go public. Bankers were talking about that, but we needed another $40 million or so in mezzanine financing to get to that public window and get out. And they didn't think we could raise the $40 million, or they hoped we did. Because if we got enough money, then we could go public, and then they couldn't afford us. So we raised the $40 million, and they told us the whole time, well, we're investors, you can't do that. And played hardball, and we said, oh, sorry, we can. And once we raised the $40 million, we had it on the bank. Now we had a clear path to IPO. That's what triggered them to say, you know what, we got to take them out now. And so we immediately started. I never spent the $40 million. They immediately bought us. Took a few months, but so you want them close enough to watch the movie as it progresses, the strategic investors, but you don't want them so close that they see how the sausage is being made. You know what I mean? Everybody likes sausage, but watching it made is not great. And so you want to keep them tasting the sausage, but not seeing all the flaws. So striking that balance. Anyway, a long answer to your short question. Who else? Yes.
So your customers gave you great feedback for the product, but all the experts said it was dumb. Why did you keep going?
Because my experts said, when I was going and talking to these experts, I was asking them to call my baby ugly. And they told me about challenges, but nobody of all those experts said there's a fatal flaw and here's why. And I never got that. VCs, I won't put those in the expert category. They're experts at what they do. They thought it was crazy. But at Nebraska Furniture Mart, in that test, I came back and now I knew that it was going to work, and that I was ultimately going to get funded, and I was ultimately going to, the mousetrap was going to work. Having them understand that was hard. In fact, big VC in the Valley, Kleiner Perkins, probably the biggest name in the Valley, big fund, they got themselves worked up. They pitched them and they were going to pass them. We had several full party meetings there. We were right at the precipice of them writing the check, or at least they thought so. They sent a bunch of guys down to San Diego, and we go out to one of the kiosks, the Gen 2. It still wasn't perfect, but and there's 20, 30-minute waiting lines, and they're interviewing the customer, and it's the greatest thing ever in cash. We open up the thing, there's tons of phones in. People are gushing about how great it is. They're really impressed. All right, let's go see another mall. Went to another mall. Same thing. Let's go to the third mall. Went to the third mall. Same thing. So we walk out in the parking lot afterwards, and I think I've got it closed, right? What do you guys think? I don't know if this is ever going to work, Mark. I got 20-minute waiting lines. Machines are doing $500,000 a year in revenue. That's 60% margin. And you're telling me you see it with your own eyes and it won't work. Investors are mostly risk-driven, and the genre at the time, and still, that they're most impressed with is internet efficiency, mobile apps, software as a service, web apps. And you can invest a little bit of money in 50 of those instead of a whole bunch of money in this one stupid idea. Want to build this really expensive machine that's going to collect junk? It just sounds like a bad idea. So they didn't know it, but they were never going to invest. They didn't know that. But even seeing it with their own eyes, they still never got income check. So we moved on. And then they came back later and begged again.
is that correct? You were also an investor in other things that you didn't.
Yes.
That didn't begin. I want to talk a little bit about that perspective. And even your last statements think a little bit about investors having a particular set mindset. What do you add as an investor?
You know, my investing that I've done and do is all. I'm really my public stuff. I know that's in the regular market. It's the most conservative you can get. You know, just bury it in the mason jars in the backyard. But I take all this risk in this area because I think I know something about it. I invest in other tech startups that I feel like, convince myself that I have some inside knowledge that other people don't know. And most of those go bad. But I like, startups. So I do all my risk there, and everything else is in mason jars in the backyard. So the way I think investors look at it, and this is, other people have talked about this similarly, but this is my observation. It's the way I think, and it's the way I know investors think, whether they're angels or they're professional VCs. They really think about things in risk, right? There's fear and greed, and they're mostly in fear until you flip them into greed. And the way they see fear or risk is, and you can break these down into 10 more, but it really is market risk, technology risk, team risk, and capital risk. And it's not like they have a score sheet, but you should have a score sheet. And the way they're thinking about it, if you think about all these four, on a scale of 1 to 10, you need an aggregate score of a minimum of 30, 32 before anybody's going to put ink on a check. But you also need a minimum score on each one of 6 or 7, because if you're 10s on 3 of them and 0 on another, it's not going to work. So you should self-evaluate using a little report card like this. Where do you think you rank? And then have other people do it too. Maybe you think your team's great and everybody thinks you're not, right? So self-evaluate, and don't ask for money until you get that minimum score of 30. And until each bar, so you know where to focus. If everything is high, but your team is way down here, focus on hiring people that are going to solve that problem, because you're not going to get investment until then. So it's a risk, and again, they're not thinking this, they're not keeping a score sheet this way, but emotionally, that I'm convinced is the way things are actually. And there can be other risks, standards risk, or regulatory risk, things like that, but it's mostly that stuff. Did I answer your question?
I think so.
What fuels your desire to keep doing this?
I don't know how to do anything else. I'm not very good at anything like this. Time and effort, so I don't know how to do anything else. Sorry. Let me give another. I'll come back. I left here, went to Silicon Valley in 1987, and I was a product manager, distributor, and then got into sales, and then went to work for Motorola. So I was going around meeting companies. Salesman, you get to walk into all these, a card from Motorola guy. I get to walk into any of these companies, and I got stuff they need. I got all these components they need, semiconductors, microprocessors. So they have to be nice to me, because I'm their sales guy, right? So I get to walk in. I go into the big companies, and they're interesting, and the people are there, but they're mostly there collecting a check. And they're not really super passionate about it. They don't care if it succeeds or fails. And then I'm starting to call them startups. And these startups, you walk in, and it was just like the words per minute that the people talk, and their passion, hair on fire, just excited about it, really care about it, whether it wins or loses. And after you see that pattern recognition, over 100 or so companies, like, wow, I want to go do those people. I don't want to not care about what's up. So that's what got me, on the side. I don't know how to do anything else, and that's to me that's one of the fun things. I'm wired that way, so I'm sorry.
Your statement about do what it takes, I'm sitting here and thinking, well, that allows unethical, misuse of power, illegal. I mean, there are other constraints to do what it takes.
Yeah, I thought that was implied. That's a good question. So that's a great point. I should make that. There is a whole lot of stuff that I do in my business that is cost me a ton of money that is not required by law or, you know, businesses are profit driven, right? You got to be profit driven, but not about everything. You have to balance, you know, obviously the way you treat your employees, but you also have to, in our case, on the environmental side, a whole lot of the stuff I do is not required. I am industry leading in the trouble that we go to ensure that nothing ends up in landfills or in spots. More than all the details, but same on the law enforcement side, stolen phone stuff. I force every customer at a great expense to the company to give me their thumbprint and their driver's license so that I don't get any stolen phones. And when I get the phones back, I keep them for 30 days instead of selling them. Millions and millions of dollars of inventory, so that in case, and it's 1 in 1,500 that ends up being stolen, I can fish it out in that 30-day time window before I ship it and give it back to the person for free. So it's a great question, and I should add that to my discussion, but absolutely. It's not all about profit. There's a ton of places where you have to set that aside and do the right thing. And I think in the end, you make more profit because of that. Because ultimately your customers and your employees and everybody else knows that too. You can't do that.
I wanted to hear that.
Thanks for asking the question. Yes.
On the fingerprints in the ID, did you get any kind of resistance from customers on that?
Yeah, a little bit. Another shocking thing is that well, I would have guessed that this is where research is bad. I would have guessed that 50% fallout at that point. I wouldn't use it. I thought it up and felt it. I wouldn't. I'm exaggerating. I've used it a bunch of times, but I would be wary. I'd probably walk away. Turns out we had a 1% abandon rate at that step. Not 10, not 50, 1%. So that was a big revelation and a relief, by the way. Anyway. Yes.
Mark, you've gone from being this incredibly successful entrepreneur, had this business that companies offered you this tremendous amount of money, and now you're an employee in a bureaucracy. Talk about your transition a little bit.
Yeah, let me comment on the first part of your statement, which is incredibly successful. I want to be clear. I left some $80 million smoking holes in the ground behind me with 6 years and 150 people, and it turns out it didn't work. $80 million invested money. So when I say hard work and do whatever it takes, you got to keep coming back for more. This is a numbers game. I don't care who you are. You're gonna, if you're the best at all of this stuff, everything, you control 49% of the equation, and 51% is still up to the gods and to serendipity and capital market cycles and stuff that you don't control. So by necessity, you're going to have to try over and over and over again. So anyway, I appreciate the comments, but you're going to fail if you do this. You're going to fail more than you're going to succeed. There's rare cases where that's not true, but for the most part, you're used to failing. So anyway, back to the other part of your question. I'm sorry, I forgot what it was.
Well, you've changed tack.
Oh, yeah, so the new company. So, yeah, I was telling you about this last night, and I'm going to sound like a really arrogant jerk saying this, but my skill set is actually really fairly limited. And I realized that I haven't worked for a company I didn't start in 20 years, and so it's a new thing to go from hiring everybody yourself, small teams, motivated, passionate, high performance, usually way above average intelligence. People I assemble together with my own chemistry and just get amazing amounts of stuff done. I'm now in a big company, and it's not the same cut of the jib folks. They're different folks. They're the folks I was talking about at the big companies in Silicon Valley that were calling on me weren't passionate. They didn't care about it. So I'm now in a sea of those people, and I realize I have no idea how to motivate those people to do anything. And so I realize how limited my skill set actually is. I need super high performance. That's what I know. I may be able to learn this other thing, but I don't want to. And so it's been a little bit awkward. There's not that innovation culture here. There's not people really roll out of bed, feet up the floor, and you just want to make it happen every day. They just kind of are there to get a check. Again, I told you that's how my arrogant, but it's a different kind of attitude about work. It's more. Yes.
So we probably, I don't know exactly who all's here, but we might have some faculty here that have that big idea in their mind, or packing their labs, or some graduate students working in their labs, or just a random guy that has a great idea. You want to tell them first 1, 2, or 3 things you're going to do that you ought to do right away.
I would go back to my list, and if you want to go do a thing, a project, a company, a product, a startup, however you're defining it, you can waste a lot of good energy and your money and other people's money on the wrong thing. So whatever the thing is, spend some upfront time before you go off to the races really vetting that thing, becoming that expert. Just beat it to a pulp, to a fine powder until you know everything you can know about that, and then if you're still convinced, then begin testing it as quickly as you can on real customers, and sort of ease into it until you're absolutely convinced. But abandon the thing as soon as you know it's wrong and go do something else. There's a lot of interesting things to do. Again, I identify as an entrepreneur, not a kiosk guy. To go do anything else, right? But, you got to become an expert. So I don't repeat myself, but that's my answer.
I was hoping you were going to say whole actually. Have the CIC help you decide what it's about.
That's what I meant to say. That's what I meant to say.
Any other questions? Anyone else? Let's give a big hand for Mark.